So on the weekends, I was going for a walk with my husband. It was a beautiful sunny day. We were walking the dog and we were deep in conversation. And I was really, really focused on our conversation. And I was kind of looking down and looking to the left, really tuning into what my husband was talking about. And then whack, I walked into a tree. And it was this branch that was across the pathway, just the perfect level of my forehead. I have walked on this path many, many times. I know about this tree, but I was not paying attention. I was not looking up, and I was kind of deep in focus into the conversation. The second that I got whacked in the forehead by a tree, or you could also say I walked into the tree, depending. I dropped to the floor and held my forehead. And that very second, I heard a voice that said, "Stop, stop, Lara." I knew immediately that this was a sign from the universe. I like to see it as a sign, but my inner guidance was very, very clear. Now, practically, you could say, I need to look where I'm going. And that is true too. But on a deeper level, my inner, that soul wisdom or that voice inside said, stop. I knew immediately. And I stopped on the ground and there was blood and I was feeling kind of really out of it. And I wasn't quite sure, when you hurt yourself, it's not always clear right away, if it's just passing. And it didn't pass, the pain didn't pass, and this strange feeling in my head didn't pass. And we'd had, other plans for the rest of the day, but I needed to basically go home. And this really threw me off. I had quite a strong physical reaction, and I basically needed to do a lot of rest. It really shocked me, but also kind of woke me up, if you will. And I started going in, because this is what I like to do especially when there's a message, there's a sign, there's a symptom, I like to pay attention. I've learned that if the sooner that I pay attention, the easier the ride is. And I decided to really deeply listen. Now, as I went into the stop message, there was deeper messages for me that were half things I knew and then half things I didn't know, areas that were in a beautiful blind spot. I had been, run down. I was, nursing a sort of chest and head cold, and I hadn't had a chance to stop because I was, launching a new event and there's lots going on in my business. And I hadn't had a time to deeply rest. So on a very practical level, my body needed to rest. And so I did. And so I then spent the next 3 days really resting. In this rest time, so there was obviously a practical rest that was needed for my body, a bit run down and needed time to process, which I knew, but I wasn't making as much time as I needed. But within that rest, there was a deeper process going on for me. What was taking me on a journey, like an emotional journey and a deeper healing journey. Now, that's the level that I like to play on when there's any kind of sign or symptom. So the whack in the head from Mother Nature, or physical symptoms of ill health, I go in and I go even deeper and say, what's going on? I've been doing some very deep processing for most of 2023, working through some old family trauma, ancestral trauma, deep wounding that lives inside of my body that I've been working on dismantling through my body, through my nervous system. It's been very exhausting on a lot of levels, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But luckily, I've got that sort of soul's wisdom or inner guidance guiding me through the process. And I've been doing a lot of work. But there was a final piece, or not necessarily a final piece, because we're always growing and evolving on this path. But there was another level that this, whack in the forehead was taking me into. And I would describe it as a deeper level of one of my trauma wounds, and where trauma shows up in my body, shows up in my business, shows up in my life, and that I'm deeply fascinated about. I'm always working this work. It's always working me. And it's a constant journey of growth and evolution. It's like the great experiment, and I'm always deep diving into it. But what I found was that there was a place deep inside where I wasn't fully holding myself. So what I found is that I can get very clear on what it is that I want, what it is that I desire, what's heart, body, soul aligned to create in my finances, in my business, in my life. I've been working on cultivating that clarity over many years, and I'm clear on where I'm going. That course can still be growing and evolving as you go, like growing as you go, but pretty clear on that. And what I started to be shown is where I stop holding myself when it comes to what I want or what I'm here to create. So I'll get clarity, I'll focus, and then I will essentially fall off the wagon. And I fall off the wagon for a really interesting reason. And I have been working with this pattern one way or another for many, many years. But essentially, it's a fear that comes up. And it's an old trauma wound that if I am 100% me, fully aligned, fully authentic, going directly towards what I want, there is a story that comes up. There's a fear that comes up that I will either be attacked through judgment or criticism, and abandoned. So attacked and abandoned, left all alone. So if I go towards what I want, essentially I will lose or I'll experience some kind of pain. And my traumatized self, because this comes from a very old wound from a very young age. I've known about this for a long time, and I've been working on holding little Lara, the wounded, traumatized part of myself. I have learned I have to hold her in order to move forward, because that part of myself, my wounding and my trauma, tends to self-sabotage and causes problems for me when I'm trying to move forward in my business and my life. And yet, so I've become better and better and better at holding myself. Here I say, hold yourself, hold your wealth. But there were still these sort of micro places that I stopped holding myself and started leaking energy. And so I'm always looking at where I'm leaking energy, whether it's mental energy, emotional energy, time energy, money energy, and making sure that everything I'm doing is in alignment with where I'm going. And so there's a lot of places where we leak energy. That's really normal, but I've been trying to really tighten up the hatches on that, and found that, you know, my trauma and my wounding, what it does is it leaks energy, because I'm so scared to focus on what I want and where I'm going, that I'm constantly kind of doing these like subtle ways of kind of pulling off my center point in order to be loved, in order to be approved of, in order to feel safe. Now, I've been aware of this for a long time, but I'm still noticing these little flare-ups in my nervous system, if you will, these little micro moments where I kind of pull off my center. So this whack in the forehead for me was showing me where I still wasn't holding myself fully. I was still holding back. I've become a lot better at this. I've been a lot stronger and more resilient than in the past, definitely. But in terms of where I'm going next in my business, there was another level of holding of myself that I needed to do in order to move forward. So the stop was very much about, we have to shift this pattern. We have to reprogram. We have to realign you in order to move forward. In order to move forward, we need to stop, right? Rest, rejuvenate, recalibrate, and realign. And then take action from a slightly deeper, richer place within. And this is the gift I've found from whacks in the head or ill health or problems showing up. I found that when I go in and pay attention, there's usually someplace I'm slightly off course, right? And there's information there to pay attention to go in. And then realign and come back and to click into a deeper, richer place. Now, if you are a recovering perfectionist like me, this is not about being perfect. This is not about, avoiding mistakes completely. There's no way to avoid failure. We learn from failure, we learn from making mistakes. But this is understanding that in the game of business and finances and life, especially on this path, it's like surfing or riding a horse. The more you surf, the more you ride a horse, the more you're going to experience getting knocked off the horse, knocked off the surfboard. It doesn't mean failure is part of the game. The key is to kind of get back into the saddle, get back on the surfboard as soon as possible, and learn from every mistake, if you will, and understand what's happening. So I found that there was still a place I wasn't holding myself. I was kind of stepping off the line where there is this, what I call the conscious wealth creation, or this wealth frequency, or this flow of energy, this flow of conscious creation that knows what to create, that knows what to do next. It's very, very clear, very, very focused. And then my traumatized self, my wounded self, that's deeply stressed by where we're going, because where we're going looks like risking attack and abandon, right? Being all alone. And so my nervous system is constantly firing off when there's a sense of I'm not safe. And it's usually showing up when I'm stepping into the unknown. That's where it really kind of gets strong, when I'm entering a new phase or launching something new in my business or making some kind of change. That's where that little wounded self can really kind of fire off again. So I've really learned to understand how that whole process works and make sure that part of me is being held. This is a process I call integrated wealth. So every step forward that you make towards your wealthy future, right, we're going to be getting triggered into our wounding, and our old wounding gets kind of activated. It's like you step forward following your wants and your desires, and it actually exposes the wound, exposes the trauma. Your trauma gets triggered, your wounds wake up. And so on the deeper level, there's an opportunity for healing. So I see this path very much as you're stepping forward to create your wealthy life, you are healing your past, you're alchemizing the past, you're transforming, right, through the action that you're taking in your present. It's very powerful, it's very beautiful, but it can also be very intense and very challenging. And that's why sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. You're trying to move forward, you're being pulled back, because your future's calling you, but that is in the unknown, which is very uncomfortable. And your past will be pulling you back. And more of the energy, most of the energy will be pulling you back into your past, or what you could say your comfort zone, or what you know. And there's some great neuroscience to explain how that works. I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm not going to try and explain the science behind that, but essentially we're more comfortable in our comfort zone, and anything that's unknown can be very, very stressful and fire off danger alert signs. So the mastery for me with money manifestation mastery is how you hold yourself through change, and understanding that everything you're trying to do may trigger something deeper. Now, of course, you can soldier on ahead without holding your wounds and holding your trauma and all of that. But I have found that at some point your past is going to catch up with you, right? If you're unconsciously creating in your business and your finances and your life, the cracks will show. And what I've found is it's better to address them sooner rather than later, because what I've seen, so many business owners do is grow and rise very, very quickly. But if the foundations aren't there, things can begin to crack and crumble. And when I talk about foundations, externally, those are business foundations, financial foundations. But the work that I do is working on your inner foundations as the business owner, your being, the inner foundations that create the outer foundations. And ideally, we want to be building those foundations from strong, stable, secure places within and without. This is a process I call integrated wealth. And it's about doing your wound work and your trauma work and going deep inside to do that cultivating work. So it's like the groundwork, the foundational work. And this work lies in the lower centers. in the lower centers of the body. So we're looking at the pelvic floor and the belly and the solar plexus area, and really working on grounding down into yourself, on deep embodiment, on and going into the self, dropping into self in deeper and deeper levels. So this is going into the roots. So we want to pull out the wounded roots, right? Get right down to the root, pull it out, or alchemize it, transform it, or if nothing else, learn to hold it so you can rise and thrive from more stable, secure, and solid foundations. I've been doing this work in one way or another for 20 years on healing, transformation. And there's some things I've realized over time that it's not necessarily that you completely, heal your trauma completely. It is possible. But what I've learned is it's also about learning to hold yourself, hold the trauma, hold the wounding. It's natural and normal to get triggered and for old wounds and trauma to get reactivated. But if we can hold them and bring yourself back to safety, to a regulated nervous system as soon as possible, then you can move forward from a more effective place. So I found that anytime I'm on the edge of the unknown, which is a lot, and pushing up against the edges of what's possible, which is a lot, I find that activates and triggers old stories, these old trauma patterns and old wounds. So where I sit now is, yes, we want to hold space for, absolute healing and complete transformation. But until that happens, we're looking at really holding the wounds and creating safe space for yourself to do that inner work, essentially to regulate your nervous system again, come back into deeper connection, which means that you're taking action from a deeper, richer place. Most often we're running off like adrenaline and not enough and panic and survival. And that can create exceptional results sometimes, but the cracks will show and there'll be leaks, there'll be issues showing up in other areas of your life. So you may notice that 1 or 2 or even 3 areas of your life you might be doing really well in, they'll be thriving in, but there'll be another area of your life where the cracks are really showing. And this is where there's like an imbalance or misalignment. So this work is really about how do we bring wealth into all areas of your life so there's more balance. Now, balance is never going to be a straight line. It's a bit like the weather. It's constantly moving and changing as you are constantly moving and changing. But it's about really tuning in and deeply listening to make sure you're nurturing all areas of your life to create stable, solid foundations. Now we've got to pay attention to the signs and the symptoms, right? The wax in the head. And what I like to try and do is pay attention to those more minor moments, right? So we don't need bigger wax in the head. Unfortunately, human beings, we tend to only really wake up or change when we absolutely have to in times of crisis. But my big passion is, how can we be on the front foot? How can we be on the front foot? Meaning consciously creating, meaning not waiting for absolute disaster before we make change. So we're ahead of the game, we're ahead of the curve. And this is what I found can be very, very empowering. So I am wondering what is landing for you in this conversation, of what signs and symptoms are showing up for you, those sometimes little whispers or little nudges that might get louder and louder, whether you're paying attention or not, maybe asking you to stop and to go within. Where are you not holding yourself? Where do you stop holding yourself when it comes to what you want, what you're here to do, what you're here to create? And where do you fall off the wagon, so to speak, fall off your center point? These are some big questions for you today to explore. I would absolutely love to hear. Please share and please let me know. This is big, a beautiful, brave work, and it is my pleasure and passion to support you every step of the way. So, beautiful. So I would love you to come and share. Let me know what's landing for you. And yeah, I'm sending you all my love to whatever knocks you're experiencing, whatever setbacks you're experiencing, whatever challenges you're experiencing. I want to normalize that as part of the game of business, of entrepreneurship, of conscious wealth creation, of creating in alignment with your heart, body, and soul, essentially being a human being that's moving out of your comfort zone. It is bumpy. It is sometimes the sea is very wavy, sometimes very stormy. But remember that we've got rafts, we've got boats, we've got ships that can navigate through the stormy and wavy seas. So let me know what's landing for you. I'd love to hear. And if you'd like any support with any knocks, any setbacks, any challenges that you're currently experiencing in your business or your finances, it would be my great pleasure to support you. So please feel free to send me a private message. Via the link below is my upcoming masterclass, The Invisible Barriers That Keep You Under Earning. That's happening very soon. You can find out more about that masterclass, that free event, and I'll be taking you through the 6 steps that keep you under earning, the invisible barriers that are unconsciously creating in your business and your finances, and how to turn that around. And if you'd like any more support, don't hesitate to reach out, send me a private message, and we can have a conversation. Send you all my love and speak to you again very soon.